Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second edition of Diplomacy Talks Croatia. This time today, we're going to have a very special guest. This is the French ambassador, His Excellency Gaël François Veyssière. Hello, Gaël. And we'll try with the first question, considering the European Union. The question is, the European Union is coping with lockdowns, protests that are connected to lockdowns, economic crisis also connected to lockdowns because of the coronavirus. Unfortunately, the Brexit situation came at the same time, and this terrible situation with vaccination slowness was on the top of this all mess. Will the European Union overcome this perfect storm that we're experiencing at the moment and get out of it stronger, or what's going to happen according to your opinion?
Well, I'm fairly confident that in fact the EU will overcome that. Well, thank you for having me first. Why am I confident? I am confident because the situation you described is unfortunately true. I mean, we have a very difficult situation in Europe, but the situation is very difficult everywhere when you look at it. And I do think that what we are trying to do now in Europe, as usual, is we are trying to adjust by more Europe to the big challenges that we have to face. And actually, the situation would be far worse in Europe now if we would not cooperate. If France, Germany, Croatia, for example, would be in competition to have a number of vaccines, for example, situation would be even worse than it is today. And actually, it would be even more difficult for smaller countries. So now we have this EU coordination set. Of course, we would all have liked vaccination to be quicker. But look at what happens in France. We have started a bit slowly, that's for sure. But we are increasing now rapidly, and we have now more than 5 million people being vaccinated, maybe 5.4 million today, the day we are speaking together. And of course, things change every day. So that is what is important now. And what is even more important is that we would continue to be coordinated, but continue to work together. If we begin to compete one against each other, it would be a zero-sum game, and that's the contrary of what we need.
Definitely. And do you have any kind of, how should I say, economic measures in France itself? And how do you think the European Union bailout program and stabilization program will work across Europe, all around Europe?
So it's a huge problem, huge social problem, and it's also aggravating, of course, the economic problem. So yes, so this is why we do need to have strong economic answers. Actually, this is what we are trying to do in France. I was reading yesterday a readout saying that in fact, France is one of the most or the most supportive country to the economy to back people confronted to the challenges of COVID. In Croatia, where I do live and work now, the government is also putting some extreme efforts in supporting the economy. I think this is something that we all need to do. The important thing is that we have EU support to do that. There are many ways the EU can and do support this activity, even in the face of this crisis. The first way is, of course, to take stock, to recognize that the situation we live in is extremely abnormal, and that it is we are not applying the rules as usual, in particular the Maastricht rules. And this is good, obviously. It would be completely silly not to do it, but it means that the EU is wise enough to recognize that the situation is very peculiar. And then, of course, we need more money. We need some additional incentives and an additional package. And this is what the European Council decided last year. And in fact, this EU money is extremely important. Each country is now in the process of driving or writing down and sending to Brussels its national plan for reforms. Croatia is doing that right now. And it is extremely important because it is not only money to help people support the consequences of a crisis, but also money to change the structure of the EU economies to be greener, to be more digitalized, to be more agile, more reactive to crisis.
I just wanted to add that Croatia got, I mean, the most money per capita than all the other countries of the European Union. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong.
You're right. You're right. It's the framework which begins this year in 2021. So definitely, it's a huge challenge for Croatia, and I think it's a huge opportunity. The ancient Greek word crisis means at the same time challenge and opportunity. So it is an opportunity that we should definitely seize, in spite of all the difficulties, the crisis, and of course, the social impact of this crisis.
Yes, it's time to change. Anyway, we had this climate problem and everything, and some kind of revolution in a kind of greener economy is needed. Is desperately needed for the planet, if not for any economy in particular. For the whole planet, it's going to be needed very soon. One more thing that I would like to ask from this question to emphasize about the Brexit. Brexit deal came into force earlier this year, and France is one of the most affected countries with this, of course, yeah, apart from the Republic of Ireland and a little bit of Belgium maybe, but a lot of ferries come from France, from Calais to Dover, and where you have this Eurotunnel, of course, you have even the land bridge in a way, not only the sea bridge. So do you have any difficulties that exceed your expectations, like trucks and lorries waiting on the border in Calais? What's going on? Do you think it's all right, it's going smoothly, or you have some problems you haven't expected?
Well, of course, there are problems. But the first thing that must be said is that at one point, we had all feared chaos, pure and simple chaos, files of trucks and lorries for hundreds of kilometers, merchandises being rotten and unable to be used because of delays and so on and so forth. This chaos did not happen in such a way, and that's good. And this is at the same time, this is normal because we have been working for years to prevent that. When I was myself posted in Paris before joining Croatia as ambassador, I was working on these issues, and we were making legislation for the French Assemblée nationale and Senate, so that in particular, we would have the powers that we would need to organize this. So it was organized, and it was not the chaos that could have been feared at one point. But at the same time, it is true, it is undeniable that Brexit has a cost. It is a decision that we, of course, it's a sovereign decision. We respect this decision. We regret also this decision because, of course, it's bad for UK, it's bad for the EU. And we can see now with the first figures coming in that the foreign trade of UK towards the EU is actually decreasing. And it is not surprising because of constraints of Brexit and because of the regulations, because of the controls that we have to do. But it all goes hand in hand, as the Brits would say. You cannot have your cake and eat it. So you have to make a decision. If you're outside of the internal market, well, you have to bear some consequences. So we are hopefully we hope that the EU and the UK are working together to fully implement the agreement of Brexit. There are some difficulties. It's not up to me to enter into details, but of course it is being negotiated between the EU and UK. We fully support, of course, the EU in that. What is important now is that also we would continue, well, we will build the future together, so try to organize things and try to see how it is for the UK to be in Europe without being a member of the EU, which is not an easy task. But I'm not surprised, unfortunately, that the figures are not good and that actually Brexit is not good news. But this is no news. This is something that we already knew. Nothing surprising in that, unfortunately. Yeah. The last thing is there is a subject which is also very sensitive for some EU countries, not only for France, and it is fisheries. And of course, fishermen of the EU, in particular in France, but also in Spain, in Portugal, in Netherlands, in Belgium, even in Denmark or in Sweden, are also very keen on continuing their activities in UK's seas. And of course, this is an important point in any discussions and negotiations, and something that we have to be very careful to be taken into account. It was a difficult point of the divorce between the UK and the EU, and we have to continue to be very vigilant on
that. One more thing about the vaccines. I forgot to write it down, but you told me something about speeding up of the vaccination process. I've heard somewhere that France has the highest percentage of people who oppose vaccination, about 40%. And we know that it's something about 67 or 70% of the people is needed to have a herd immunity, to have a collective immunity. What is the French government doing to promote the benefits of vaccination? Now we don't have enough vaccines in France, but when we get them, how can we convince people to actually be inoculated?
Well, I've seen in fact, when the first polls came out a few weeks ago now, the two more sensitive countries about vaccination, the two more skeptics countries about vaccinations were France and Croatia. So it struck me at that time. I think that this is changing, and this is changing quickly in France and certainly in Croatia too, because the more people get the vaccine, the more the other people would say that it's okay, and that the benefits are far over the drawbacks and maybe the risks. What is a bit polluting this discussion right now is this AstraZeneca situation, which is now being freezed, the distribution of this vaccine in many countries in Europe, including France and Germany. Today, we are the 18th of March, we are waiting from a recommendation from the European Agency for Medications about this vaccination. And of course, it will play an important role to have a scientific view of the EU ESMA agency. So this is where we are now. In France, it is striking that yes, we started slowly vaccinating, maybe too slowly. The French authorities did recognize that, but we were cautious not to push people too much. And the truth of the matter is that now the figures are increasing very quickly, and we are above 5 million people being vaccinated, 5.4 in particular. So this is good. It must also certainly continue, and we have to continue to explain to the population the advantages of the vaccination, and also people have to understand that there is something such as scientific trust, and that we should base any decision on this and not about rumors or fantasies.
Yes, I got my AstraZeneca vaccine some 3 weeks ago. I spent one day in bed with fever, but nothing big happened. So I'm expecting the second dose in 9 weeks. So
and the good news for you is my understanding. I've got a friend who is a doctor, and he was telling me that 5 days after the first shot, you begin to benefit greatly from an additional protection due to vaccination, even though you did not get the second shot. So good for you. And if I could, I would certainly do a vaccination too.
Yeah, that's I understand it's a particularly strong one. So you have this kind of reaction. Of course, they inject the virus into you, so it's a normal process of an organism to fight at least for 1 day. But let's go a little bit further. How do you assess the relations between France and Croatia? Let's go a little bit further from from vaccines and lockdowns and everything. France and Croatia, how do we cooperate?
We do cooperate very well, and I think that we are in this crisis, we are improving our relationship, we are deepening our relationship, which has always been excellent, but we are deepening them. For example, when there was the first earthquake in March 2020, we immediately sent some support to Croatia, and in particular to the civil security and the firemen. Last year, for 14th of July, I did not organize a chic meeting or rendezvous in a big hotel, but we were providing support to the firemen. And again, after the earthquakes in December, the French Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Le Drian himself, went to Croatia mid-January, and he brought with him some support that arrived the same day and the day after, in particular mobile homes and tents for displaced people in the Petrinia area. So we are friends, and it is in the difficult moments that you have to demonstrate friendship. Friendship is like love. There is no such thing as friendship. You have evidence of friendship. So this is what we are doing. And I must say that doing this, we also remember that when the French cathedral in Paris, Notre Dame, actually had this terrible burning event and was partially destroyed, Croatia was among the first countries to propose assistance and support and financial assistance. So this is what we call European solidarity, and we have to stick together. So we have very good political relations. As I said, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, European Foreign Affairs was here. We expect that President Macron will visit Croatia, I hope, in a few months, still working on the timetable. And we have also strong economic ties, but of course it is quite challenging now because of COVID, for like everybody else. In particular, there are French, the airport in Zagreb is a French investment. And of course, all airports in the EU are suffering, which is normal, unfortunate and normal. And we also have a very intense cultural relationship. As you may know, we celebrate this year the 100th year of a French institute, which is one of the oldest in the region and maybe in the world. We started this celebration in February last year. It will continue until the end of the year. And we have today in Zagreb a great French and Belgian author, Eric Emmanuel Schmidt, who is actually presenting its play, Monsieur Ibrahim et les Fleurs du Coran, in the SNK in Zagreb tonight to the Croatian public. So we are very happy we have this opportunity to demonstrate that we have been working together for the last 100 years and we want to continue to do so. Actually, it is really cooperation, building together, organizing things, translating also Croatian authors into French, and organizing big events. We also have a Moda is Trip cartoon and fashion event in Zagreb, and many other events are being organized at the end of the year. It is a great moment. It's a bit difficult, of course, to get financing for all that because with COVID, of course, money is short and with the earthquake. But we are very happy that we are working with our Croatian colleagues and also with some companies who do support us in spite of all this difficult situation.
Yes, so you've answered my next question, basically, but half of it. The other half is what is baffling me during my whole life was the question that I really followed the situation about the literature, art, and everything in art history, and France was a leading cultural power for I don't know how many hundreds of years, and somehow, maybe during the 1970s, it all went a little bit to Britain, a little bit to Berlin now, a little bit to America, and France is, I don't know, lost its like a title of champion of culture. Can we do a little bit more to promote the French culture to be the leading one, not the leading one. It's maybe a too ambitious a word, but to be one of the leading superpowers in culture, as it used to be like 150 years ago. 100 years ago, everybody flocked to Paris to see what's happening. You know, how can we make France, to paraphrase Mr. Trump, great again in cultural terms?
Well, paraphrasing, I didn't know that you were paraphrasing Mr. Trump. Well, well, the first thing to say is that we certainly want to make France great. We certainly are striving for that and working on that, but certainly not as it used to be. We are not going to recreate the world of the 18th century, where it is true, culture was mainly in Europe a French thing, and at least in my field, which is diplomacy, but the only language of diplomacy was French. These times are gone; they will not certainly go back, and I'm not sure that we should waste too much time on that. Apart from knowing them, because knowing the past is always good. But certainly, there are many new ways that we can use to promote French culture, to speak about what we are, the way we see the world, what we want to do with other people. I will just take one example, the French language, because French culture is also coming through, not only, but also mainly coming from French language. Obviously, we are not trying to say that French should be the first choice, contrary to English. I mean, we are realistic people. We know the world where we live in, but we do think that learning French is actually a very great, important added value for people, and that in a world where everybody would speak English, or the kind of English I speak, which is kind of globish, which is not Shakespearean English. Huh? Let's be frank about it. Having an added value is most of the time knowing or mastering another language, be it French, Spanish, German. And what we are doing, or Chinese, or Arab, or whatever, Arabic, whatever. And what we are fighting for is not only for French, we are fighting for plurilingualism. We are fighting for the right for people to learn different languages and to be confronted to different ways of seeing the world. So this is what we are trying to do now. It is an important objective, of course, of our diplomacy. We believe in that. We spend lots of money in that. We invest in that. We don't see that as spending, actually, but as an investment for the future. And what we are trying to do is to propose to people to do that with us, actually. So this is what we are doing in Croatia, trying to have things which are made in cooperation with Croatian authorities, Croatian artists, Croatian authors, translating, of course, translating French people into Croatian to make them better known, but also translating Croatian authors into French and supporting them. And there will be in La Comédie du Livre, which is a main book event in the south of France in Montpellier next year. Croatia will be the main guest, which is extremely good. So this is what we are trying to do. We are not trying to reinvent the old ways. It's not going to work, but we are trying to be creative and to propose alternative ways to see the world. And we are convinced that this way of thinking does have an added value in the world we are here today.
Yes, what I wanted to say, je dois dire que parler français est très important pour moi, mais je ne peux pas opportunité pour pratiquer, pour parler français ici, c'est problème pour moi. That's basically what I wanted to say every time when I meet a French person, and when I want to apologize about losing some words and losing some proper pronunciation and everything. So I believe that French language should be more present in everyday life in Croatia and everywhere, pretty much, because it's so pretty and very important.
As soon as the COVID situation will permit, come and see me, and we'll have a chat in French. I see that you have a very good level. Maybe you are just a bit rusted. You need a bit of training, and that's it. Merci à vous. Merci à vous.
So, what do you plan? What is planned for the month of Francophony, which is undergoing right now, I believe?
Month of Francophony. Yes. Well, the big event right now is this event with Eric Emmanuel Schmidt, famous of the Evangel, Pilatus Evangel, among others, and he has just published a new book, Lost Paradise, with a reference to Milton's work, of course, in French. I'm finishing it. It's very exciting. So we have this. We have also many other facilities, French courses, activities, and we are working on that. But the main thing now is this is the visit of Eric Emmanuel Schmidt. There is this spectacle in the SNK tonight I was referring to. Yesterday, he also had 2 meetings with the Croatian public, of course, while fully respecting the limitations due to COVID. So it was not huge, but as much as we could. What else? And we are also working on. He made a big event in TV this morning. I think it was Dobro Jutro in HRT. And he will make some prizes to some students. Also, he will give some prizes to some students of French of the universities of Zagreb and Zadar. Oh, so this is extremely important, and I think that this is moment we had last year. Well, this year we have Eric Emmanuel Schmidt. Last year we had Leila Slimani, who is also a very important French author. I think it is very important for the public to meet the authors, and it is also something that can give people who will to better know contemporaneous French culture, what our authors are now. I mean, studying Stendhal, Victor Hugo, and so on and so forth is very important. It is key, but we also are proposing some very modern and vivid culture. And French culture is definitely much more than Versailles and Comédie Française and Panthéon and all these things. It is also something very concrete. We are also trying to develop French classes linked to the economy, in particular to the tourism, in the business of tourism in Croatia. Because if you are a chef working as a cook in Croatia, or if you are a waiter, if you work in a hotel, certainly French can be of use to you. So this is what we are trying to do. Of course, since it's the month of Francophony, we are not doing this alone. We are doing this with our partners. The operation with Eric Emmanuel Schmidt is co-organized with the Belgium embassy, because there are members of Francophony, but also because Mr. Schmidt himself is at the same time French and Belgium national. And we are working with all the other partners of Francophony. So basically, this is it. And we, after the month of Francophony, we will have many other opportunities, in particular about French movies in September, and music in Zagreb with the 16th anniversary of the Music Academy, and so on and so forth. So there are many projects now, and we hope that everybody can participate into that, either directly or through the digital means. And I want to stress here that if you go to a French institute in Zagreb, actually you can have a digital abonnement, which would enable you to have access to plenty of resources online without having to get out in COVID times.
Great. Can you tell me something about the economic cooperation investments and everything in that area? French investments in Croatia exist, but can they be bigger after the Corona crisis and all that problems we've faced during the last year?
You're right. Maybe the economic relationship is the part of our relationship which could be more easily developed, because it's a bit delayed compared to the others, political and cultural. Nonetheless, we already have something like 60 French firms or firms related to France working here in Croatia, which represents something like 5,000 people working for them. So it is not insignificant, but of course, it is nothing compared to German interest or Italian interest. It is not completely surprising for historical reasons. We are a bit far away. At the same time, we are working together. We have some flagships, the airport, I mentioned that. if you go through Croatia, you may bump into some decathlon places, where you can buy some sports article. In fact, it's a French mark, and so on and so forth. And of course, there is the Be-Nice Istra highway in Istria, which is now being doubled thanks to French investments, and so on and so forth. So we do have some companies. Each time I'm speaking to French companies, I see an interest. It is true that in France, for historical reasons, there is no automaticity in thinking about Croatia. This is not the traditional horizon of French economic interest in the region. But as soon as we begin to discuss to people, they are extremely interested, and they do appreciate very much the Croatian mentality of people working hard and wanting to do business and to make things straight. And at the same time, of course, the fantastic location of Croatia. It's a very nice place to be and also to work, actually. The Croatian government itself is trying to make some efforts to attract investments. So I'm quite confident that we will manage to increase the flows of investment. It will take a bit of time because of COVID, of course. We are increasing our trade between the two countries. Well, we have been since the last 4 years now on a row, waiting a bit to see if this is going to continue because of COVID, obviously, as per usual. But it is important to see that even in these difficult circumstances, we continue our exchanges. I think it's important not to stop and try to prepare for the future. And we have to work together on EU investments. I mean, we all have the same challenges. Of course, France does not have the same kind of economy as Croatia. We don't have this huge part of our GDP on tourism, even though we are one of the champions of tourism in the world, actually. So this is a challenge that we do understand. But the challenges on substance, being greener, being more digitalized, are the same for everybody. So let's work together on that. And this is what we are proposing to our Croatian partners. In 2019, there were 20 million tourists in Croatia a year. It is a very high number. It is absolutely clear that this country could not support to have 40 million instead of 20 million. So the outcome, the economic interest of the country is to have a more sustainable tourism. And certainly this is something that we can work on because it's the same thing for us in France as far as tourism goes.
Yeah, so I've heard some 17 years ago, actually, when I was the editor-in-chief of the magazine called Travel Magazine from Belgrade. I've heard, to my surprise, that France is actually the world champion in tourism, I believe. And I thought it was Italy, but it was France, basically. Italy was second place, Spain was third, and something else was following. So that was really a great thing for France. So but France has so many different levels of industry, so many different areas of industry, not only tourism as a main motor like Greece or Croatia, or even how should I say, maybe Portugal, Spain. Spain also is like France.
Also agriculture, yes, of course.
I believe. I believe that the countries of G7, like Italy and France, can cope a little bit better with the lack of tourists than completely tourist-orientated countries like, I don't know, Cyprus. Tell me something about the military cooperation. We've heard something about Croatia buying new war airplanes, the old ones wearing out. So there are a couple of bidders that sent some offers, and one of them, a particularly interesting one, is and media talked about it very, very extensively, was Rafale, the French one. Do you think it's going to happen, and how do you assess the possibility of military cooperation?
Well, certainly we are proposing to Croatia to increase our military cooperation. And you're right, we have made an offer for Croatia to renew its fleet of fighters, military fighters. It is an international tender based on specific rules, so I cannot enter into the details, but my understanding is that there are 4 international offers being presented, and Rafale is one of them. It is the first time that we present Rafales which are used by the French armed forces right now. That it is the first time that we present that in an international competition. Actually, we have just sold Rafale to Greece, both planes already used by the French army, but also new planes. But it was not an international tender. It was direct agreement between the 2 states, France and Greece. So we are in this competition. All I can say is that we are fully confident that we have a very good proposal. We have been trying to cope, or we have been trying to address as best as possible what was important, what was expressed by the Croatian military. And now we are waiting for them to take their decision. We fully understand that the decision was a bit longer than expected to be taken, because, you know, after earthquake and so on, it is completely understandable. And on our side, we don't put any kind of pressure. It's a sovereign decision. There is no decision which is more sovereign than this one. So the ball is in Croatian camp. If they need any information or whatever, we are here to supply it. And now we are waiting for them to make their decision. The important thing is that in our proposal, we propose some planes, and we are convinced that those 12 Rafales are the best planes possible for Croatia. But we also propose a much more strategic cooperation between the 2 countries as far as military goes, and to work together to strengthen Europe and defense in Europe. And when I say Europe, I don't mean the EU. I mean Europe. So it can be either for the EU, it can be for NATO, it can be for bilateral cooperations, it can be for whatever. But we all have the same interests and the same challenges, and that is to have better, more agile, more modern air defense in Europe, and we have to invest in that. And we are trying to build a cooperation project, strategic cooperation project around that. Well, this is it. This is on the table now, and the decision belongs to the Croatian authorities.
Great. And the last question I would like to ask you is about the tourist season this year and all these announcements about green cards, COVID passports, certificates, codes, and everything. So the newest thing that I've heard like 2 days ago is that the entrance and free movement around European Union is going to be allowed for people who have negative PCR tests like 10 days old, either or to have tests for antibodies that they got the coronavirus and survived it, and or they got the vaccine that's not registered in the European Union, or they have one of the 5 or I don't know 6 vaccines that were registered in the European Union by EMA. So many tourists are eager to visit France after 1 year of not traveling. My wife is crazy about Paris. She always asks me when we're going to go to Paris, or even smaller cities and Côte d'Azur. What are we expecting from the European Union and from France this year? Is it going to be after, I don't know, the 1st of June, let's say? Is it going to be open to a little bit breathe after all this terrible things that we survived during the last almost 13 months?
Well, thank you for your question. It's very difficult to guess what's going to happen. As far as COVID goes, we have been going from surprise to surprise for the last 1 year, more than 1 year now. But we have to get prepared. And of course, it is very important that we would have the same lines as much as possible inside the EU. A few days ago, I think it was yesterday, the EU Commission did put on the table a new proposal, which is called the Health Pass, based on the idea that people that would have this pass either because they are vaccinated by a vaccine which is recognized by the EU, or that they have a PCR test or these kind of things, can enter into the EU easily or travel into the EU more easily. This is going to be discussed. Of course, what is very important is for us is first that we would have an EU coordinated answer. In particular, when we discuss the situation with the rest of the world, I mean, addressing the situation with Western Balkans, for example, it is an EU interest. We must have, as long as possible, the same position. The second thing, so first, an EU framework. The second thing is that it would be very unfair if it would be based only on vaccinations. Because in France, for example, we have been increasing a lot, but we have 5.4 million people vaccinated out of 65 million. So it would be very unfair if only those ones could travel and not the others. And then we still have a bunch of scientific issues which, to my knowledge, are not completely settled. For example, it's not completely clear whether people with vaccine, as yourself, as I understand, they cannot get sick, but maybe they can transmit the virus. And this should be known because, of course, it's a very different situation whether you can transmit it or not. So all this is going to be addressed. It's very good that the Commission would have put a proposal on the table. Now we have something very concrete to discuss about. Actually, the European Council a few days ago discussed that. We'll certainly continue to discuss that. So we have to work together. France, until now, has been one of the most open countries inside the EU from the EU. So treating EU nationals extremely more openly, much more than many other EU countries. It is true that from outside the EU, it's a different story, and because we have red lines together in the EU, and we have to continue to work on that. So what's going to happen? I don't know. We all hope that the situation will improve significantly in the next months with, spring coming in and then summer. And that as it was last year, actually, it would be much more possible to have a very normal life. But we should continue to get a vaccination because ultimately this is the answer to this crisis.
Great. That would be it. And thank you for being my guest. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Veyssière.
Merci à vous. Merci à vous.
See you again, I believe, maybe next year. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was Diplomacy Talks Croatia, show number 2. We had a French ambassador as a guest, and it was a wonderful conversation. And it was the first that was not completely in English. We spoke a little bit of French. Thank you.
Well, 2%. Thank you for having me.
Au revoir.
Thanks a lot.